Let's talk about metformin in the context of anti-aging or longevity. How do you use it?
You can buy my workout programs as well as other merchandise in my webshop, link in the description under this video.
Personally, we both use it. We've been using it for years. The data mostly is inclined for diabetic patients, but we know for optimization, there's a ton of data as well showing that for longevity, first of all, it prevents neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's disease, and beta amyloid buildup in your body, in your brain, or misfolded proteins. Cardiovascularly, it improves your lipid profiles. It cleanses the microbiome from toxicity and bad microbes. That's why most people, when they get diarrhea, they're actually flushing out the system. It's actually a good sign that you're toxic and you need to titrate down in order to adapt to it so you can rebalance the gut microbiome. What else? For cancer, and what else? Oh, yeah, and for weight loss, because it activates the AMPK pathway, which I like to take. Well, David Sinclair, he's like the #1 master PH on epigenetics and longevity. He likes to take 1,000 milligrams at bedtime. The clinical dose for diabetes is anywhere, it's around 1,600 milligrams to 2,000, sometimes even higher, but that's typically what people take. I personally take a 500 in the morning, 500 at night. I like to take it in the morning on a fasted state because of the AMPK activation, which is kind of like a sensor for fat burning and longevity. So I like to take it to activate it because when you're fasting, it turns to switch off. So this helps to switch it on, get me more in the fat burning mode. And it just works well for me.
I'm always the practical guy, like why, right? Why take metformin? So first of all, it's one of the most well-researched medications in the world, right? It was, developed back in the 1920s or discovered in the 1920s. The research really began in the 50s. And so on. And now traditional medicine is coming around to it. They're kind of like 10 years late to the party. They're finding phenomenal things, anti-cancer properties. But for me, it's as simple as, and you and I have talked about this immensely in regards to testosterone and everything else. No question that modern society and our modern style of living has given us a better quality of life, but there's some consequences to that, right? Like the environmental toxicity. And, there is no other time in history where you have had a room full of people developing taste profiles. The food industry has spent billions upon billions of dollars, developing taste profiles that light up our brain the same way that sex does, cocaine, and addictive patterns, right? And so we have become, as a society, really addicted to certain foods. Not to mention, obviously, the enormous amount of sugars that are constantly being introduced into foods, right? With names that we can't even pronounce. And most people don't read nutrition labels, let's face it, right? Aside from that, look at restaurants, umami, right? Like it's the perfect ratio of fat, salt, and sugar.
They call it the perfect taste bud storm
that exists nowhere else on the planet, in whole form, right? So, and add to that also that we've been under this low fat craze diet indoctrination for the last 50 years, which we know when you reduce fat, you got to increase what? Sugars and carbohydrates, right? And so that has caused what we have seen now, so many people in pre-diabetic and diabetic levels, right?
Well, which, by the way, we like to consider pre-diabetic is kind of like you're halfway pregnant. Yeah. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant, right? So pre-diabetic markers for us is as good as diabetes.
It's bogus, right? So here's what happens, right? We introduce all this sugar into the system. We have glycation of sugar into the system, which is tantamount to sort of like putting acid inside of the hoses and tubes of your car, right? Eventually, that stuff begins to erode your piping system, which is called the endothelial system.
Scarring your endothelial system.
So your body is so magical that it actually tries to protect you against the assault that you're causing. So then it starts to patch up the walls and to harden the arterial walls, which then decrease the blood flow, which then ends up in a heart attack, right? Yeah. So again, the reason why we take it's like, well, I don't need metformin. Like I'm not a diabetic and I'm not obese, but hey, I don't grow my food. I don't have a cook that cooks all 3 of my meals in whole form. And even if you buy, right, I know
we have somebody that cooks.
It's unrealistic.
We actually have somebody that comes and cooks their food because we've seen that all the oils they use in restaurant, even category 5 best, most famous restaurants use, canola oil. So we have somebody that comes to our house and actually cooks.
Right, but most people, that's unrealistic, right? And so, you're not going to cook all your meals in whole forms. And even if you buy organic, it still has like 50 and over pesticides in them, right? So we do it to protect ourselves against our modern style living that we're subjected to, right? Like that, it's just truth. Like, if a friend comes from out of town and he invites me to a restaurant, chances are I'm going to go, right? Yeah. So,
but I'll take 2,000 milligrams of metformin.
Yeah.
So I know I'm gonna eat cheesecake.
Right. and so we do that. We do that, guy, to mitigate the cost of our modern style living. And because look, I can't control what the chef does in the kitchen. I can't control Nabisco and all these food. If you eat anything in a package, chances are it has some form of sugar or some form of insulin spiking agent
or foreign substance that your body doesn't even recognize,
that you cannot control. So in order to kind of protect ourselves against that, we take metformin, which is a protection and an aid for longevity, right? Because for us, longevity is over everything. We value our internal health more than our aesthetics. Like I'd rather give up some aesthetics than have a healthier lifestyle. And that's also the problem with our modern style living, is that we've been able to improve lifespan, but we spend more of that lifespan sick. So it's not necessarily like that we've increased the quality of life throughout that lifespan, right? So that's our point.
Yeah, no, and there's a couple of things that we use along with that, which, by the way, I wanted to, just before I forget, there was a study that showed, because most of these studies are like earthworms and rats and stuff. And I guess, I don't know, the pharmaceutical industry doesn't want to make human studies because they might just blow the gasket off, the society of like sickness to get people.
Yeah, this is not good for big pharma.
Exactly, it's not good. And one study showed that patients who were diabetic taking metformin lived 15% longer than those who were healthy people that did not take metformin and who were not diabetic. Which then there was like a earthworm study that the earthworm giving metformin lived 20% longer, the mice lived 6%.
Yeah.
And the reason why they do it on mice is because there's a lot of like similarities the way we react, but their longevity system is much different than ours.
And it's kind of interesting. If your insurance gets like news that you're taking metformin, they will mess up your premiums. If you have life insurance and they find out that you are taking metformin, they could cancel your life insurance. And it's like, why? Right? So it's an interesting question. It's an interesting question.
Not only that, what were you gonna say?
Yeah, one of the typical comments or questions I always get whenever we mention metformin for longevity, it's bad for your gains. Is there anything to that?
Yes, I was gonna get that eventually. But wait, let's stay on the longevity side for a second. We also were trying right now, spermidine is the next thing because it activates FOXO3 genes, which are longevity markers. Then metformin activates the AMPK, and resveratrol activates the sirtuin genes. They're all longevity markers. So the more we can activate these longevity markers, the better. For example, having leftover NAD in your blood that's not being utilized will also increase longevity because it activates the sirtuin genes. So we like to take a mixture of everything, to not just focus on one part of the aging gene, but rather as many genes as we can activate. Another thing, before we get to the lower testosterone mitochondrial response, which we'll tell you about that. One thing that we're about to start using a lot with patients, again, not for optimization purposes, so they can learn better in real time how to gauge what they're eating. So I'm sure you tried this, Steven. We've done it before, and we find it useless to be counting calories. Yes, does it work? Yes, if I'm going to be a bodybuilder and I'm trying to like target a specific thing, but I'm not going to live my life like that. I plan to have a kid next year. I don't have time for that. And nor do I want to live my life like that. But I do want to understand how my liver responds to food. So for example, I'm wearing right now the Freestyle Libre glucose sensor, which is this one basically, Freestyle Libre. So It has about a 30% deviation. So usually you need a finger pricking as well, but it's just to get an idea. So let's say, for example, like
it gives you a ballpark figure.
Exactly. Like right now, if I scan myself, right? Let's say I ate, right? Let me scan myself, boom, so people can see how it works. My blood is around 99, right? So we like to try to keep the range between 70 to no more than 120, even when you eat.
Right.
If you go over 140, clinically shown that you cause an inflammatory response in your body, an insulin spike, which we all know that stores fat is not good for you.
Yeah.
So we try to tell our patients, hey, we don't care what you eat. Go try your Twinkie and see if that works out. As soon as they have the Twinkie and their sugar shoot up to 200, I think you're going to know really fast, hey, I might need to avoid this food or maybe eat a little bit.
Yeah.
So for example,
it's an objective measurement that helps you control. Like, it doesn't lie, right? Numbers don't lie.
Exactly. So if I like cheesecake and I go and I eat the whole cheesecake and I tell you don't go over 140 nanograms per deciliter and milligrams per deciliter, and all of a sudden I eat the cheesecake and I go up to 160. Next time I go, let me eat half. I ate half. I go to 140.
The whole thing.
Oh, I'm still high. Let me go out again. Next time, let me eat a quarter. Oh, now I'm in that 120 range.
And the interesting is
I can eat my food, my cheat meal, but I'm not causing too much of a super physiological inflammatory damage to my body, which is what we want. We want people to wear this just like 2 months. Just have an idea of what you're eating. And I promise you're going to notice really fast what foods cause a spike and what foods don't. Which ones don't? Protein, complex carbohydrates like cruciferous vegetables, fats, things of that nature.
And even how you combine foods, right? Because the worst thing that you could do, for example, when you're breaking a fast, is to eat sugars and fats together. So there's been enormous data, and also we've tried it with this. When you eat the protein first and then you add on carbs, your insulin spike is less. And also, this is where metformin comes in. We've done it without metformin and with metformin, and metformin does not allow
it improves that sugar sensitivity
to cross a certain threshold, which is ideally what you want to use it for. That does not mean, for all you people watching, that does not mean that you're gonna eat metformin and then eat whatever you want. That's not what this is about. This is not about a cheat. This is about to help you and aid you in this process, right?
Just like supplements. It's not like you eat just supplements. Oh, I got all my vitamins. That's why they're called supplements. They're supplementing your diet, but you cannot replace food and lifestyle.
Also for your listeners, we've also been really getting into another medication that I think is available in Europe. It's called semaglutide.
Yeah.
The semaglutide basically delays gastric emptying, right? So it slows down the speed ratio at which your food traverses through the GI tract. So the net effect of that, without bothering you with the science or boring you with the science, the net effect of that is that you get the feeling of satiety really, really fast into eating, like 3, 4, 5 bites in, you're super full. You remain full for a long time. And also it suppresses your hunger. But it doesn't suppress it in the way
leptin, improving the leptin. So it's like you don't have to even think about food. It makes it so easy.
And it's not like phentermine where you're all like shaky.
Or a dry mouth and erectile dysfunction, because all of that stuff.
It's amazing. It also reduces inflammation in a lot of your organs. So we have used it to incredible results when combined with obviously a proper HRT protocol or TRT protocol. And obviously, you also got to talk about diet. But it makes, again, we have been under the exposure of the food industry, which has developed, we still are unconsciously certain addictions to certain foods. So, the average patient that we've had on this medication has lost 33 pounds roughly, but
that's the study, like one of the strongest studies show that the average person loses around 33 pounds.
Right. And we've seen that. We've seen that in our practice, but what I think is the coolest, and by the way, him and I have both tried semaglutide. I'm still on semaglutide, and it's been 8 weeks.
I love it. I don't have to think about overeating. It pumps the brakes.
I'm not morbidly obese. I don't have diabetes, but it's the same theory that we use with testosterone, right? Microdoses of the stuff. And what I've seen, what it has taught me, and what I have heard as a feedback, the sort of pattern of feedback that I've received from semaglutide is, man, it has really changed my associations to food. So it recalibrates not only how you think about food, but that sort of euphoric experience. Because let's face it, for some people, food is a social thing. It's not nutrition. It's social. It's entertainment. It's pleasure, right? And that comes from these taste profiles that we've been talking about. So with semaglutide, it's like sometimes you think about food and you're like, it's just, you're not turned on by it, right? So it changes some of the associations. That, for example, someone who's 50 pounds overweight, it's very difficult for them to drop weight because when food is presented, they get all these, you know, their brain lights up like an addict, right? So semaglutide helps immensely with this kind of somatic kind of attachment to food, and we've used it to great success. So I definitely, for your watchers, it's a good thing to research, and since it's available in Europe, we strongly recommend it.
Oh yeah.
So let's get into the.
Sorry, we completely.
Go ahead.
We took
Go
another
ahead.
path. But it kind of, you know, it relates because that's what it's used for a lot as well. So in regards to the side effects or the affecting the athletic performance. So it's apparently found that it reduces testosterone, CoQ10, B12, and
Increases ferritin, not ferritin.
what was it?
What's the other one?
And you can suffer from lactic acid. Oh, lower mitochondria function.
Homocysteine levels.
It reduces your home mitochondria function. So unless you're a competitive athlete that you know, like a fraction of a second can cost you a knockout, the finals of the game.
Right. Or a loss of a race.
Understand. Lay off the metformin because it could impact performance. I've personally experienced it myself. So it's just one of those choices. Do you want longevity, or are you a professional athlete and are you willing to do whatever it takes to be number one?
Right.
So yes, could it slow you down? Unless you're a competitive professional that's making millions and millions of dollars, I wouldn't worry about that.
Yeah, so to kind of echo that, the mere mortal, you know, if you're taking your proper supplements and you're on testosterone therapy, you're not going to feel the difference.
Yeah.
It's very, like, you have to be the difference is so minimal that you have to be really.
No, you have to literally be a professional athlete, or you have to train like a beast to understand, damn, I feel I slowed down my rep. I did 2 reps, like literally
Less.
people who actually jot down, I did 2 reps less, my time is slower. Yes, you'll find a little bit, but unless, again, you're making millions, doesn't matter.
And let's face it, I mean, if you're on testosterone therapy, you should be taking B12 anyways. If you're on testosterone therapy, you should be taking CoQ10 anyways, right?
Yeah.
So,
To protect
you
the
know,
heart.
you're taking metformin or adding metformin is only a valuable thing.
Right.
Oh,
But be cautious about adding it with CoQ10, B12, and these other substrates in order to prevent any problems. And the lactic acidosis, that's usually for a diabetic patient that's taking I think it's 4,000 or 5,000 milligrams a day. And we're talking about 500 to no more than 1,500 milligrams here, you know? So that's about it with that.
Consider becoming a channel member for exclusive features, like loyalty badges, early access to new videos, funny stuff like rough cuts and bloopers, members only photos and status updates on the community tab, and members only live stream chat. On desktop, use the join button next to the subscribe. On mobile, use the join link in the description.